Okay, welcome everyone. Welcome to Hacky Hour, alwaysAI's weekly Hacky Hour where we cover some topics of interest. It's very informal. If anyone's new, please raise your hand, type questions in the chat. I'm Lila Mullaney. Komal is taking some time off today, so you're stuck with me. I'm a developer advocate and a software engineer with alwaysAI, and I'm joined today with Steve Grisette, our CTO.
Hello, everyone.
Nice, thanks for joining. So yeah, today we're going to be doing a continuation of last week, some custom streaming, and we're going to be doing interactive web apps, which is going to be using a Python framework called Dash. And so while we're waiting for people to come in, I thought I would do what Komal usually does, which is show newcomers how to get started with an alwaysAI project running a simple object detector, because that's what we're going to be doing today in the other app. So real quick, let me share my screen. Okay, so if you don't already have an alwaysAI account, you can go to alwaysai.co and sign up and get the desktop installer installed. That will come with the CLI and everything you need to get started. Then you navigate to your dashboard, and we'll go back there real quick. So you can see, you click create new project. So then we have some templates here that come just with the app.py file already filled out for you if you just want to get up and running with one of the core computer vision services. So we'll do object detection, and we'll do dash Hacky Hour and create project. Okay, and then you'll see we have this command here, and if you haven't already installed the desktop installer, you can download it. I'm on Mac. If you're on Windows, you can do Windows. We don't have Linux yet, but if you go to our documentation, there will be setup instructions for getting your Linux machine all set up and running. So once we have this project started, you can see here we have the MobileNet SSD object detection model that comes with it. You can change models. You can add a new model, browse the model catalog, or if you've trained a model using our model retraining toolkit, then you can add an object detection model you've trained yourself. And so once we have that, we're going to go to your command line, navigate to a terminal where you want to run your project, and I'm going to make a new directory, test, if I can spell. Okay, and then we can see there's nothing in here. So I run this AI app configure -- project with the project ID, and it will know which project I want. And it'll ask if I want to download, and I do, because everything is, I don't have any existing project files. So now you can see we have all our project files here. And then we run app install, which pulls down the models, builds the Python virtual environment, and it will install any dependencies, which are in this requirements.txt, but I don't have any, so it was a pretty quick install. And then we start our project. And we go to 5,000, and Como is usually much better. She has like plants in the background. I don't. So that's running a basic object detection model. Before we move on, were there any questions or anything anyone had? Otherwise, we'll just get started with the content for today. Okay, I'm not seeing anything in the chat, so I'm going to start a new share. I have a bit of a PowerPoint today. Okay. Do you guys see this okay? The interactive streamers with alwaysAI?
Yeah, it's
nice.
up.
Okay, thanks, Steve. Okay, so last week, Eric showed you different ways to do video streaming. He did the ZMQ, if I'm getting my letters in the right order, video streamer. This week, the streaming is going to still be using the alwaysAI webcam stream, and we're just going to focus on integrating an alwaysAI app with a framework that allows you to easily create some interactive components of a web page. So it's maybe not the most robust system. You might want to swap out different other apps, like different parts of this app with other ones Eric has done, depending on what kind of performance you need. But I wanted to keep things pretty simple and just focus on the new stuff, which is, it takes some getting used to if you haven't worked with Dash yet. So first, what is Dash? Dash, it's Plotly Dash. If you haven't, you're not familiar with Plotly.js, it's a JavaScript graphing library where you can create very nice visualizations. So Dash is a framework that is expands on Plotly, and they have a few different versions. There's one for R, Julia, and Python. So obviously, because alwaysAI is Python centered, we'll be using Dash Plotly for Python. And I have never worked with the R or the Julia one, so forgive me if you have questions on that. There's tons of documentation online though, and I'll show you some of that documentation. And forgive me if any of this seems kind of unfamiliar, or if there's terms I'm using. We're just diving into it. If you have questions, you can raise your hand or type them in the chat, and I'll try and stop and see if I can check the chat. Or sorry, the Q&A, that's probably better. But we're just going to dive into the new language, these new terms, and hopefully by the end of it, it will all kind of come together. So Dash enables you to use Plotly graphing, the Plotly graphing library within your Python applications. And it has lots of these things called components. There's some core components. There's Bootstrap components. If you guys have ever used Bootstrap for your web page layouts, rows and columns, forgive me. And then you can also create custom components. So as I mentioned, React is a JavaScript library, a user interface library. And oh no, sorry, I didn't. Man, my throat. React is what's added to the Dash Plotly framework for Python. So you guys already know that you can build web applications with Flask, and that the alwaysAI streamer uses a Flask backend. You know, or now you know that there's a JavaScript library called Plotly.js, and that enables you to have really nice visualizations. Now there's this extra layer called React. If you're not familiar with React, it's a user interface library. It allows you to update just parts of a web page that you want rather than refreshing the whole browser. So it's very popular with single page web applications, and it enables you to be much more efficient and just target certain components. And these components are what I'm referring to when I say that there's Bootstrap components, custom components, open source components. So if you don't know what a component is, that's fine. We're going to get to it. For now, suffice it to say that there are areas of your web application that have a certain functionality. And I'm not super well versed in React. I've worked with it a little bit. So if you're very familiar with React and you don't think I'm explaining it well enough, you can please type in the Q&A or raise your hand, and we'll get someone who can explain it maybe a little better.
So Lila, I think you have a get up there too. You may want to put that into the thing so people.
Yes, yeah, I can put that in real quick.
Yeah.
And we have some Q&O chat. Oh, it's hello all, hello AB. Yeah, real quick, let me navigate to that. Okay. I'm putting this GitHub in the chat. I'll also put some very basic documentation. I'm going to be sharing a few different links, and I can always put this stuff up on Discord, like the PowerPoint and whatnot afterwards. That's just like the landing page for Dash Plotly. There's tons of extra documentation. Okay, so I think, are we okay to keep going, you think?
Yeah, I just wanted to get, so people can get their system set up if they wanted to
Very
come
good
along
point.
and
Yeah.
follow and so forth. So on that. So
if you guys want to, you can do that same exact workflow I did to do a new project, but you can click start from scratch and then don't download any files. And you can do git clone or just download the zip file from that GitHub repo into that same empty directory. And then when you run app configure with that new project ID, it will not have any files downloaded, and it will just configure that GitHub new, that new local clone. Let's see if there's a Q&A. Oh, nice. Hi, Zybe. Good morning. I'm well. Thank you. How are you? Nice. So yeah, let us know if you have any problems getting that up and running. And thanks, Steve, for getting us started on that so they can all get their projects configured. Okay, let's.
yeah, this is an area I'm no good at, so I'm going to try to follow along too on the Git.
Oh, that's good. That's always good. Yeah, it takes some getting used to. It really does. But it's a cool framework once you get used to the new syntax and whatnot. Then I don't know. It's one of those things where there's a few different options you can have when you're doing these interactive web apps. And I kind of wondered, Dash versus just working with Plotly, or you can use React with different backends. So this is kind of like bringing your front end into the back end in a way, because you're doing your front end coding in your Python application. But once you get used to the weird kind of syntax changes and wrapping your mind around the components with Python, then it's not too bad. It's pretty cool. And then there's tons and tons of open source components out there, some that were already made by Dash Plotly and some that users have just created and put on GitHub. So that's cool. Okay, so that's a little bit of background. So Dash for Python is Flask plus React plus Plotly. And it's got a couple key components, and that's probably not the best word because I'm using components two ways here. Two features. The first is the layout, and if you've done any kind of web application development, that's your HTML and your CSS styling. So instead of writing that in HTML files and then calling them with routes, rendering pages, like you do in Flask, you actually code in a like a hierarchical layout in your Python code, the same like Pythonic versions of this HTML code, and those are your components, and then you update them via these things called callbacks. So there's layout and there's callbacks, and once you wrap your mind around how to stylistically make these things and then refer to them, that's all you need to get up and running. So the callbacks dynamically update the HTML components whenever input changes. So I don't know if anyone wants to think of some input that would be changed. If you want to put it in the Q&A or raise your hand, then I can let you guys take a stab at it. But I was just trying to, and not just continually talk over everyone, but what types of things on a web page would be updated that could then change the content that's being rendered on the page. And if no one wants to do it, I can just go ahead. But you know, if you think about a typical web page that you use, how are ways that users interact with it? You know, maybe they click a button, maybe they drag and drop files, maybe they have a menu there that they want to select an option from. Let's see, we've got someone. Yeah, like in Facebook, yeah. Yeah, like let's see. Yeah, like anything. Actually, I think I always get these mixed up. I think React was made by Facebook. And that's because it's like the single page web
Yes,
app
it
sort of
was.
thing. Yes,
Yeah.
yeah.
So it
Yeah,
definitely came in from Facebook. It's a
yeah.
good set of libraries. So yes, so
Yeah.
use Facebook.
Yeah, and like think about Facebook, it's huge. Like if you had to re-render that page every time somebody clicked a button or hovered over something, that would be a nightmare and horrible end user experience. So that is yeah, that's a good example. But I was thinking more like, I was just trying to get you guys thinking about what are these types of Dash components that you would end up adding to your application that then would change on an update. And there are things like button clicks, hovers, drop down menu selections, drag and drop files, text box entry, you know, anything like that. Anything that could register as an event, you know, then that's a part of your web application that, yeah, any events, yeah, exactly, ACP.
We
So
have a raising their hand. So real quick.
let's see. Oh, yeah, there you go. Thanks, Steve. Okay, you should be unmuted. Or you should be able to unmute.
Hello, how are you?
Hi, good, how are you?
My question is can we make a custom web interface of Always AI using these languages?
Oh,
You're muted there.
Oh, that was weird. Yes, thanks, Steve. Yeah, you can. Well, this will show you how you can kind of customize that streamer when you do AI app start, that you can have some interactive components on your web page, your application page. Does that answer your question?
Yes.
So
Okay.
I think if
Thank
you
you.
combine the two, like if you go back and look at Eric's from last week, he shows you
Yeah.
how to set up something independent of the streamer. So how do you get that into a web page? I think some people figured out the 0MQ stuff that he did, but basically, if you look at his Flask piece from last week, so
Yeah.
you could build your own streamer using that piece of it. And I think we have a GitHub for that, don't we, Lila?
Yeah. Yeah, I
So,
can
so
find it.
if you use that and then use this dash piece, then you can customize that web page that you built from last week and start to do it. And that will allow you to run an application independent of our streamer or anything like that and set up your own system. So
Right, exactly. So I stuck with our streamer for simplicity and because there's a lot of new stuff with this Dash stuff. And this way, you know, there's a few different things. Eric's app that I just put in the chat does like a client server architecture, and it does its own like a different streaming service. This app that we'll show today is just one application, and it's using the alwaysAI streamer, but it adds those active components. It's just Python though. So, and alwaysAI is compatible with Python libraries. You just need to add in the requirements and install them. So yeah, that's a good question. And that was a good clarification. Thanks, Steve.
we have another
AB,
question.
yeah, I thought AB was raising his hand before.
Yeah. AB, do you want to
Do you want
jump
to talk?
in? And then we have another question outstanding. Is it possible to upload videos from a file for trial? Not sure what.
I've definitely uploaded images with Dash, and I've streamed video, as you'll see in this app. So I don't see why it wouldn't be possible to upload a video. It might be a little funny because there are like video components in HTML, this bypasses that using an image component and constantly updating the image. It should be possible though. That's a good exercise. Maybe that's when we can follow up on Discord, see what kind of stuff you can work out. Okay. Okay, so I don't see any hands raised. I guess we'll continue. Let me know, AB, if you wanted to raise your hand or if anyone else wants to talk. And oh, no, maybe. Sorry, I thought I saw a hand.
That was me. That was me.
Okay, good.
That was an accidental push of a button. So, you know.
It's good. Now we know it works. That's good. Okay, nice. Yeah. Please, Steve, if you see anything, just interrupt me. It's hard to see on the chat always which ones it is. All right, let me see. I'm just trying to find my thing to share. Okay, here we go. Okay, so yes, things that can update on input change, button clicks, sliders, dragging, dropping, file uploads. Yeah, so I have some other, let's see, if I change this, can you guys see this, or it's still going on the PowerPoint? I think it is gonna, well, do a new share. Stop share.
Well, it was showing the Git repository. Sorry,
okay, nice.
I was running. Like I told you, I'm trying to learn too. This is
sorry.
I was running your app and going through the code, so sorry.
Oh, nice. We're gonna get to the code too. Just 1 second. So this is the Dash user guide, and I put that in the chat. So there's tons of tutorials. This will go over the layout and the callbacks that I talked about a bit, but I think we're at the point where I'm just gonna run this app for you guys, and then we'll check out the code. Okay, so let's do. Okay. Share. Okay, you guys seeing my desktop?
Yes.
Okay, yeah. Thank you. Perfect. All right, this we're done with, I believe. Okay. I've already configured and built. You'll notice, if you haven't already tried, that it does take quite a while to install some of these dependencies. Okay, so here I am. Is that working? Should be working. Yeah. Okay, and I think we're having some problems. Maybe I need to like turn off my video. Yeah, I don't know why that is strange. Doesn't seem to be updating. Let me see. Oh, geez. Let's try it one more time. I think it might have been because I was using my webcam for the Zoom. Yeah, there we go. Okay. And that's another thing, like I said, the streamer is just, there's no extra threading I did in this. I wanted to keep things really simple. So yeah, if you're trying to use your webcam for 2 different things, that's not going to work. So you can see this table is updating. It's updating every 5 seconds. You'll see it get bigger in a second. Hopefully anyways. Maybe. Yep, now there's 4 pages. So sometimes it sees the person, sometimes it sees the person in a chair, and this is the timestamp. You can also export. That's just like a feature that's built in. Okay, so if you're trying to run it, don't try and run to your webcam on 2 different applications. That will be a problem. Let's see if there are any questions or anything yet. I don't see any. So we can just go over the code. And let's pull up. This is the repository. So we've got the project files at project and JSON, Docker file, the README, and the requirements.txt. Let's check out these requirements.txt. So we see Flask. That's all stuff for building your Flask server. Dash, pandas, that is just because I'm using some data frames in this application. Plotly, and then there's these Dash bootstrap components and Dash tables. So the Dash bootstrap components are those bootstrap components that I mentioned earlier. Those are, if you've ever used Bootstrap, containers, rows, columns, that sort of thing, that will give you that functionality for those resizing features. And then the dash table is, that is this you see right here. This is a component that I think it was just an open source edition that somebody made to the Dash community. So let's see, how are we doing? Okay, we've got one Q&A. Q&A is always a camera. Can we access an alwaysAI camera? Let's see. Let's stop. Like I am using their public IPv4 DNS service from a different Wi-Fi. So are you talking of as like just computers in different locations? You can, like on my local host, if you know something's IP address, it should, you know, that's going to be however you're sending the sockets or
yeah, there's a API for IP streaming, Lila.
Yeah.
So you should be able to do that on it. The issue is that when you use IP streaming, your camera has to have a fixed IP. And so as long as you can resolve getting to that IP, then it should be okay.
Yeah, as long as the IP is public, AB is saying yes, yeah. And the port has access if you're using a specific port and the port has been enabled.
Yeah. So, and then Abbas is right. It'd be, you know, whatever your IP address. So let me go ahead. I'll put the link into the video streamer if you go in, and it tells you how to configure it and use it in the code.
That's great.
I'll do that real quick here.
AB has said you can use a DDNS. Just to read his answer off.
Okay, there we go.
Okay, nice question. Okay, if there's no more questions, I'll share this code and we can step through it. Okay, so let's see. Up here, we've got our imports. I added some extra ones that are not used in the app because I just wanted to show that they're there and that they can be used. So this Dash core components, that comes just with Dash. And this is pretty standard to do the DCC. And Dash HTML components, you'll notice neither of those written the requirements.txt. So you just import them, and then this is kind of the standard in all the Dash tutorials that you just abbreviate them like that. Dash dependencies, input and output, that's important, and that's for the callbacks. And they have a little blurb in the Dash tutorials to not confuse these with other, it's not like an input component where you say HTML.input, you know, if you were doing an HTML input field, like a text entry, that's not the same thing. So this is the Dash Bootstrap components. And again, this DVC is kind of just standard in all the tutorials. Dash table was separate, and I had to install that separately, and you import it separately. It's like a new little library that somebody wrote. This is handy if you want to, if your callback is triggered, but it's triggered with data that you didn't want to act on, then you can check for it and then call this prevent update. And so I don't use it in this application, but I just wanted to put it in here as like a marker for people to be able to reference it later if you come across that issue. And then finally, this graph object says go, and Plotly Express as PX. Those are really handy for making different types of charts and graphs, which we're not doing in this one, but are pretty standard visualization things that people would want. So I wanted to just include them to have you guys be able to look and see that that's what you want to do. Okay, we've got a couple of questions. Okay, let's see. Avis is asking about the IP question again. Like DuckDNS automatically updates your IP. Can you use that as well? Say example.duckdns.org port 5000. That I don't know. Steve, do you know? AB has raised his hand. Okay, let's
Yeah,
see.
so let AP, but I think not. I think you have to have a fixed IP address. So, but we'll see. Maybe AB, you've tried that, but go ahead.
Yeah, hi. Yes, you can use, so duck DNS is one what you have in case you don't have a constant IP address. So that's what duck DNS does it. But if you
Okay.
take up, that needs to be renewed every 30 days if you're using a free account. But if you're using a paid account, then you don't need to. Yeah, it gives you a fixed IP. It manages itself.
Yeah.
The daemon manager. So it installs a daemon. So what it does is it constantly sends your changing IP address to that DNS entry, and then you always interact with that DNS a record. That way, you don't have to bother what's going in behind the scenes.
Nice.
But problem here is if he tries to use the IP to send this huge video over public internet, it will be very laggy unless the person uses WebRTC or something, that kind of protocol. Doing TCP over IP is not a great idea. Or only LAN is fine, but not over WAN.
Yeah, and we don't have WebRTC support yet at this point in time. So you make a very good point, AB, on that. And then the other question is, can you change ports? We're fixed on our streamer, but if you were to follow Eric's piece that he did yesterday, you build your own. Yeah, you can assign it what port you would like to assign it to.
Yeah, and actually this app also, I changed
exactly,
the port.
I was about to say that. Yeah, I was about to say that. In this app, I think you can do this.
So you guys are, yeah. So
just
sorry,
for some flavor, yeah. Good point. We have one more question from Jean. I noticed that React is not imported. At what point is it brought in? That's a good question. So what happens is you write these components, and I haven't done this myself yet. That's my next self goal to do, is to write a custom component. So what you're seeing in this app is all Python, and that's kind of the magic of it, is that it's on the back end. So you write these components, and then they're converted into this Pythonic version. I don't know. I'm not super familiar with how it does the conversion to React at runtime, or how that happens. So that's a good question, and I'm a bit ignorant in that aspect. So I just know how to use it and work with it, but I'm still learning a lot about it. But that's also good. You can use this without digging into it too much. It's pretty accessible, which is nice. So that's a good question. I'll try to look into that more and put it on Discord. Nice. So I think that's it for questions. If that didn't answer your question too, please feel free to follow up. Okay. So we'll take a look at this code. Okay. Hopefully you guys are all seeing that. And then here's your Flask imports. That's almost identical, I think, to what Eric had in his. Pandas, I just kind of separated these out so you'd see the different functionality. And these are kind of your standard alwaysAI application. We always do EdgeIQ and CV2. Usually there's a couple things we like to do with that. And then time is handy. So here's my very basic EdgeIQ sort of incorporations. I have the streamer and an object detector. And if you were doing this in a more robust way, you'd probably want to separate things out a little bit more, and you might have to consider more exception handling and threading, like you saw my camera tried to be accessed twice. That obviously wasn't the intended purpose, but I wanted to keep the code focused on Dash as much as possible. So we have, when the program starts, what we do is we start that camera and we try to run, and then this closes off the camera at the end. That was some good practice that Eric added in. I was going to add it in last night, and I was just kind of at the end of my day. So that's good. Let's see. Here are some Flask or some helper routes, or helper functions, excuse me. So sorry, I'm just trying to think of the best way to dish this stuff out. Let's do this first. Okay, so here's your Flask app. This also, I believe, should have been in the application that Eric did last week. It's just your basic server. And Dash runs on top of Flask. And so I put the Flask routes right here. This is just your regular, you know, the app starts up, you need an index HTML route. And then this is used in one of the components to render the camera stream. So I'll show that in just 1 second. But here is how the Dash app is fit in. You call it something different. So some of the tutorials will say app for Dash app, but because we wanted to be able to access our Flask routes and our Dash routes in the same application, we do some extra handy stuff here where we add this URL base name, and we set the server to this Flask app. Actually, that might be standard in everything. Sometimes you'll see the Flask app called server too. Just not, you know, it doesn't matter. You can call it anything you want, but in case you're going through a tutorial and you're wondering, it's the same thing. I just had a regular Flask app and then I called this the Dash app. So when you're referring to your Flask routes, you always want to reference it by the thing you called your Flask application, and same with your Dash. So let's see, we're doing Go Kate for questions. So I said there's two different parts of a Dash application. There's the layout and there's the callbacks. And we kind of are already familiar with the Flask routes, I believe. So this is if you wanted to load a new page, that it would go to this app route. But what this Flask app route is doing is it's using a generator function to use the input stream coming from that webcam video stream. It reads in a frame, it performs object detection on that frame, then it changes it to the proper format, this string format, and returns it to be rendered. Here we go. And you'll see down, where is it? Here, this is an HTML image component whose image source is that route. You can also put a static image here. So this is what I was thinking. You could probably put a video component, or if you uploaded a video, you could have another component here that was a video upload component, and you would then set a variable like setting camera to be that video file. I think that would work, but again, that's something we'd have to try out. And I don't know how well it would work, but okay, sorry if I'm getting a little off topic here. Feel free to stop me with questions. But so that's kind of how these different components work together. You have this Flask URL, and the Flask URLs are handy for a couple other reasons. Here it is. So that's one reason. You can have these files being streamed. You can also have like an event route. If you were doing a client server architecture and you were sending a response, like a get or a post, sort of that, like a post response, you could have a route for that event, and then you could update data based on that. I wanted to keep things pretty compact here, so I didn't do that. So I mentioned that route reads the camera frame, performs object detection, and converts it to a string. So let's cover quickly what that perform object detection method does. It's pretty simple. It's what you would see in a regular app.py file in an alwaysAI app. You just, well, I resized the image just for prettiness, because otherwise the webcam video stream is like 720 by 1280 or something. Then we get the results from running an object detection prediction or object detection on it. We get our predictions back, mark up the image, and then we encode it in this byte string. That was also in Eric's application. That's so I kind of took the original parts of his application and just split it so that we could do some object detection and then also get these objects themselves from the results from running object detection and update this data that will be sent to the table. So it's this global variable. Again, maybe there would be a better way to do that, but what this function does is it just iterates through all the key value pairs in this object, which I just got the labels from each results.predictions index value and join them in a string. So you can see person dog, person chair, person, and then I dropped duplicate so we didn't get like these actually have been rounded, so there's lots of milliseconds after them. So we rounded them and then we dropped duplicate so it wasn't like 15 seconds person. That's just, that's just for visibility niceness. Okay, so that's about it. If it was none, then we do it for the first time. Otherwise, we append it and then we drop all the duplicates and returned this marked up and then encoded this encoded string, and then that is what's returned here, and then we just use this generator function return. I don't know how to properly explain it. I've only used generators in the context of doing this image streaming, so I'm not an expert on them. It's still kind of weird to me to even think about them. If somebody is more well versed in generators and they want to dig into it, then please do raise your hand or type in the chat. Pretty much, it's instead of returning, it will it returns like an iterable and it iterates over them. So it picks up where it left off the next time it is called. Is how I think of it. That might not be the best way to describe it. I don't know, Steve, do you have any better ways of framing that, or? I think we're good. I don't see any questions, so.
No, that was fine. Sorry, Lila.
Okay.
Again, I'm looking at your code. I'm
No,
doing
that's
the
fine.
Hacky hour this week, so sorry.
Yeah, no, that's fine. Yeah, if that's a good enough
Sometimes if you lose
explanation.
me, it's because I'm actually learning
Lost in.
today.
Yeah, no, that's good. I always try to join Hacky hours to learn, and then sometimes I'll get pulled into something else. So I'm glad. That's good. Okay, so let's recap. We've got the streamer, we've got object detection. Then whenever this function is called, it just gets the camera stream, performs object detection, returns it as a string that can be rendered in this response. And then that is what is the source for this image component. Okay, so now we've talked about kind of like how the app is working in general. Let's talk about what Dash is. So Dash, we said, has a layouts and callback. So this is dash app.layout. You always need this for any Dash app. Then kind of just like what you would do for a regular web page, usually you start with a container and rows and columns. Maybe instead you have like a div inside that, and then some more rows and columns. There's probably some best practices there. Then you'll see these attributes. So these are very important. And I will say there's kind of what is it? Typically they're camel case. So there's one that's class name equals, my container. Typically they're camel case, but if you use some of these other components, you'll notice that sometimes they're not. They're snake case. So that's one drawback to it. Is that not everything is open source, so not everything is like very strictly adhered to. Also, these are whatever the person who made this component, this dash table, wanted them to be. So you have to look them up. It's there is some standardization here. Class name should work always on any component. that's like a dash, either DBC or HTML or DCC, those dash core components, dash bootstrap components, dash HTML components. But if you ever hit any trouble, it's always best to just look up the documentation for the dash component. And here, let me actually do it real quick. I have a page pulled up that shows just that. Let me find it real quick. Stop and share. Let's just stop this real quick. Stop share. Then I'll go find my, sorry. It's always like the logistics of working in Zoom. Okay, so I think this is a good one. Yeah, this is a good one. Share. Okay, so this is the this is the page for a slider. So this is what it would look like, right? This is a slider. See, and it updates. So I just typed in dash slider and it came up. I clicked on this page. I have some tutorials, and then at the bottom you can see ID, class name. Then it has drag value, disabled, included, loading state. So these are all things that you can access. You can access them and see when they've changed, and then act on it. Make your application do certain things. And you can also use them to set the values. So I think I'm just sharing. Well, I'll just be safe and do that. Okay, so you see these values here. Children is another one. Children can be accessed, and you can see the children are all these other components, rows, columns, image. So you can update the children on a callback too. So sometimes you'll see that where if if an input changes, so let's say like my input is a drop down, and I drop down to a certain value, like 1. Then I want to update my children to just have a certain graph. But if it's 2, then I want to update my children to be a different graph. And you could hard code those up here, like graph 1, graph 2, and then you could just be children equals graph 1. So sorry if that's not super clear. Let's look at a callback. So this is the second part of the Dash application, Dash callback. So we have their Dash app, which I said is our Dash application's name instead of regular app or whatever we called it, Then you say .callback, and then inside these parentheses, you have all your logic, and you have output and input. And sometimes you'll see it written like this. That's fine too. Same thing. Same, it will work either way. So I never remember which time you need these lists. I think you didn't used to need them on output because you could only have one output, but now you can have multiple. In any case, I always use the list because it's just simpler. So the format is you have your outputs and comma and then inputs, and you can also have state, which I didn't want to put in here and get too bogged down in. But if you're familiar with React, then you know that you can also have state, and what that does is it enables you to have this callback triggered callbacks are only triggered when an input is changed. But if you want to use the state to influence the logic of what you do in this callback, then you can put the state here too and access it. So, maybe that's like how many users are logged in or the data that was in a table. So that's a little beyond the scope of this tutorial. I just wanted to mention that if you're familiar with React and you are wondering how state comes in, that you can also add that in perfectly fine. So we see these output logs data. Whenever you have this output, the logs is the ID of the component that you want to update. So let's find logs. Let's find ID equals logs. And we see this is the data table. And we saw that the second thing was data. So whenever we call this component, the output that gets changed, one of the output is logs data, and the other is logs columns. So that is the table data and the table columns that are getting updated whenever something that we haven't covered yet is altered, whenever some input changes. So is that seems like there's no questions and stuff at that point.
There's
So
no questions, but we could just hear Kamal in the background.
oh, nice.
I'm not sure what it is and where she's coming from, but
Interesting. Maybe I have like a video
Right,
playing
I
or
think
something.
you do. I think you do, because we can hear her.
Weird. Hold on, let me
Like
see.
she's kicking off her own Hacky hour someplace.
That is funny. I'm just closing down all my like Safari windows. I bet you because I like checked, or maybe I don't know if anyone else has. No, they shouldn't be unmuted. Yeah, it was probably just like a video loaded or something. It's weird that it lasted that long. Is it still there? Is it gone?
Oh no, we can still hear her in the background.
Let me see. I'm gonna mute and you just tell me if you still hear it.
Yes, we do. We still hear it.
Okay, then somebody else's got to be
AB's the only one on and he's muted. So
that's weird. I don't know where that's coming from. That is very strange. I can hear it too. I have no idea. I've closed down all my Safari.
Lila, can you share your screen?
Yeah.
The browser.
I don't have any web browsers up anymore.
As you can see, I've already created a project for
But I can share a new one.
Go ahead and click into
Kamal haunts us.
Yeah, I know. I don't have anything. I'm just quitting everything just in case.
onto the
I don't have any.
catalog, which gives information about what this model is.
I've
and
closed down, like I've quit Chrome, Safari. I don't have any videos playing.
You might be in a different workspace in Mac, maybe.
follow.
No, I only have this is my personal.
I'm gonna copy this. And then
So Avis thinks it's a ghost.
Yeah. Steve, can you try muting for a second?
Yeah.
I don't know.
and I'm gonna proceed.
Okay, I think.
Yeah, I
Okay,
muted her.
Steve,
can
I
still
think
hear
that
it.
I didn't hear it when you muted. Maybe there's.
I was just muted, so that was just for a second that it stopped for some reason, but I. Okay, now it's gone. Sorry, it was me.
Okay, nice. Oh, that's funny
It
though.
was me.
No, I wonder. Maybe it's
No,
because of.
you know what? I was on Discord and I clicked that video from last week. So
Oh,
that
it was
was
just playing in the
bad.
background.
So it's no ghost. It's just people pressing buttons or a person pressing buttons that shouldn't.
I like the ghost better. That's funny.
All right.
That's good. Okay, nice. Okay, so I think we're doing okay for questions. So, okay, data and columns gets updated. So when do they get updated? They get updated when this interval component, when the n intervals attribute changes. So you can see that whenever you put an input here, you have to put it here. So if we had another input, we would need to, like just for instance, this also doesn't matter, it's just for input. And if this was, this isn't proper. This component doesn't have an end clicks, I believe. I don't think it should. But if let's say it was a button click, let's actually do like this. So if a button click was here, and actually I'm pretty sure you can have multiple inputs trigger for one output. But in case that's wrong, don't hate me. Maybe it's state or something. Whatever you put for inputs, state is also here. Or it might not be in the inputs. Sorry, it would be in state. But you would need to, anything that's not an output, anything that's getting passed in to this render log table function needs to be listed here. So just keep that in mind. But I've made my demo more complicated than it needs to be. I just wanted to mention that. So anyways, n intervals gets updated every 5 seconds. So if we didn't want to have this whole layout be updated, you can have this little, you can, whatever you put this, that's fine, because what matters is what's updated. So it's not updating the whole page, it's updating the table. Technically, other things are being updated on different times, you know, because this image is just streaming. But so if you want this interval to update every component, you just have to add this input to every callback that you want to be updated, which is a little redundant, but it's handy because that way it won't update your entire page. But you could have another component that gets updated on a button click or a drop down, anything you want. So all we do here is we just get the data that's this global data frame. Then we just change it to a dictionary, because that is what what needs to be returned for this records. That is what the data is. This is what it needs. It needs this dictionary. And then this is a list of all the columns. Sorry, a list of pairs for the column names. So I would say the hardest parts about Dash are figuring out what these attributes are for these custom or even non-custom, any component that you want to work with. Looking these things up can be a bit of a pain. And then figuring out what the format they would need to be in, how often they're updated. Some things return like really strange, like dictionary strings that you need to parse. Some things have function calls to help you parse them. But once you get past that, and you can learn, you know, one component at a time. And once you get a little bit more familiar with different error messages, then it just, you know, it's kind of a steep learning curve, but I would say it's really not bad. And then you can just, you know, keep customizing your web application as you get more and more familiar with Dash. And then as Abbas asked, you can change the port, just like any Flask app. This is the app, this is the Flask app, run on port 501. And I will also point out that Dash, any app you want, you can name it whatever you want within reason, but you need to have this trailing slash at the end for the Dash route. But you can still access the Flask routes as well. So let's see, are there any questions? We're almost out of our, you know, regularly scheduled Hacky hour time, but I'm happy to stick around if you guys do have some questions, if you want to see it run again, or anything like that. Seems like you guys are either just really super confident with Dash, or you're just giving it some time. You want to try it out later, which is usually the case for me. I like to just rewatch the video and.
Well, I'm working on it too. I'm trying to get it through CSI camera and everything. So I'm trying to run it on a Tinker board. So if you figure out I'm distracted, we had a customer that was running a Tinker board, and so
yeah,
I'm trying to work on and deploy it there, Lila. So I think, yeah, I'll probably.
I did try deploying it on a Nano yesterday, and I was hitting some issues, and I was like, well, you know, and I did put in the README, I've tested it on Mac and Windows, and it works there. Windows 10. So forgive me if it's not working with your current situation. We can try and figure out, you know, how to deploy it on an edge. Or maybe, you know, if we did like a client server where the client app just sends the object detection frame markup and data to that Flask event or something URL, that would definitely work. I've done apps like that where, you know, you can have one, like Eric did last last week, he sorted out that bug too. If you go check on things.
So apologies to everybody if I'm, pushing buttons and things like that. I was trying to work on stuff. As
Yeah,
doing.
But it is fun. It's fun once you get it up and running to tinker with it. It's and like I said, it's a little weird at first with the callbacks and the layout and stuff, but it's a pretty quick learning curve. And they actually do on the Dash website, if you are totally new to React, you have no idea what these components are, you don't understand the input output, the hardest part is understanding that relationship between the input and the output trigger, and just properly getting those attribute value. So component ID, component value, getting that lined up. And there's lots of tutorials, and even if React tutorial on that Dash web app website, if you need to just have some groundwork laid, that it's just a really helpful thing. So let us know if you have any questions on Discord, and
And I'll see too on Discord whether I get it up on the Tinkerboard and run it. So stay tuned, people. And then the last thing I wanted to talk to the community about is that somebody wants a Discord link.
I will pull that up.
I'll probably get Kamal talking again if you let me go over on Discord.
Yeah.
We don't want to do that. So
I will pull it up.
I did want to tell the community we are having a release on Sunday, and it is a breaking release. We're adding right now, if you're running your app, you have to do the deploy and you do the install and everything else like that. We're reintroducing the deploy command that will actually allow you to make a runtime Docker container and so forth. And we're also getting our commerce up. So with that, the CLI is adding some commands and functionality. And what that means is that we are, like I said, we're making a breaking change. The easiest way to handle it is just let the desktop update. So go to the desktop, and when it asks for an update, click the update and you should be fine. The only thing you'll have to do is reconfigure your devices that you're currently just run the alwaysAI app configure. Now, it's going to sound confusing at the end. So next week, we figure we'll cause a little chaos with a breaking change. So we're going to do office hours next week and so forth. But I think some of the things I may show, we will have YOLO support and TensorRT that will be coming out with this release. So that's kind of nice, so that you can run on your Jetson devices. If you have an Xavier at 20 frames per second, and I forget what it runs on a Nano, so things like that. So I may have some fun showing you guys some of the new functionality that we'll have in it. AB and I were over. He was the one who got me over on Discord because he was messaging me, so I'm blaming AV today on there. But what he was pointing out, we're talking about, we had some trouble getting I had some personal problems getting OKD cameras out of China from the shipper, but they did come in, and we do have OKD, so we're expecting to March OKD support, and we're a long ways. We're really close to that. We're Tyga, and maybe I'll post it up on Discord if we can, or get it up there, but I didn't think it may be too big. But anyway, he used an iCloud camera running one stream and a OKD camera. He was tracking himself moving between with an object detector. So that was really cool on that. So we will be having that coming up too. So on some stuff. So stay tuned. Anyway, that's it. I just want to tell people, and we'll be around on Discord. So if we mess you up, we'll work you through everything. So that's our promise.
Definitely. Dave says he accepts the blame.
Yeah, or Steve can't chew gum and walk at the same time. One or the other. So
it's Thursday. I'm sure everyone's had a bit of a week.
Yes.
Anyways, yeah. Well, thanks for coming, everyone, and make sure, we'll send out an announcement about the office hours. So please come to that if you have any questions. And I think the last couple office hours are really fun. So
Yes, and we'll any pointing devices when I'm over there, we'll let AB control them. I agree with
yeah,
that.
there we go.
That's a big
Just
thing.
control the computer. That's his master plan. Yes.
So Como was with us, whether she did,
Yeah, whether she
doesn't know it.
implemented or not. I did wonder, like, well, maybe she logged in. Anyways,
All right.
oh, it's fine.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Bye.